Yeah, so when you're ready to move up here and then commute southward as opposed to north, because
I
you
know.
are
I
you
know.
living in Brooklyn or in
Yeah, I'm
Manhattan?
still in Brooklyn and I'm going to commute for a while.
Yeah,
And they know I'm going to commute. So
sure.
we're
Right.
sort of like figuring things out with that in mind. But I'm
Right.
going to be up there most days.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's going to be exciting for you because you know, there's something really nice about just getting out of the city, like let's face it, you don't realize it sometimes till you're doing it, and then you're like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." I mean, the commute might be a little wearing after a while, but
Yeah,
you know,
we'll see.
you'll take that on as when you need to. Anyway,
Exactly.
good to see you. Good to have you. And I was thinking about it, and I think this podcast, it's just been going on for forever, but I don't think you've ever been on it before.
No, I have. I have
Oh, I'm sorry.
once or twice. But since I've been at the
You
museum,
sure?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm trying to figure out when it was. I know we
It
talked.
might have been when you first came to. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we talked about it for a long time, and then I think maybe when I first went to the museum, somewhere soon after that, I came on to talk. I can't remember what the sort of inciting incident was, but yeah.
Right. I'll take a look back. Apologize if.
Oh
Well,
no,
welcome back is all I can
thank
say.
you,
Then
thank you, thank you.
I was just really glad for the opportunity. It's been so long since I've seen you, anyway. But
Yeah, it's really
yeah.
good.
And what is this? Did I read correctly? Please correct me. Obviously, if I'm wrong, is this the 14th first look?
This is the 14th first look. Yeah, it started in January 2012 with the Chantal Ackerman's Almayer's Folly. That was the first ever opening night film with Chantal in person. I was not there at the museum. I was actually doing the curtain raiser piece, I think, for the Village Voice, or maybe even the New York Times. One of those two. I did the curtain raiser for the festival, and yeah, 4 years later, it was my first year there, and this is my 10th first look, but the
Wow.
14th overall.
Oh my God, time flies. Well, I
Yeah.
think I actually I should have taken a moment and looked, but in my memory, I was talking to David Schwartz
Hmm.
about the first look,
Hmm.
but I could be wrong because that sounds awfully early in the history of this podcast. Where at first I was like not taking equipment around, but I did it at some point or other. I started,
Hmm.
getting like the like portable equipment like this and taking it to the
Hmm.
museum, but I am almost certain I remember the first one. And
Yeah.
anyhow,
Yeah,
14.
it started off that first year with David Schwartz, who was the chief curator of the museum, Dennis Lim, and Rachel Rakes, both of whom were at
Right.
the museum at that time. Of course, Dennis and Rachel have been doing stuff at the New York Film Festival and beyond since then.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, it started in one capacity, and it's kind of become some other things. But
Yeah.
there's certainly continuity.
The idea for the first look, as far as I remember, was that it was sort of, um, as its name implies, coming out of the festivals, the prior festival season. Maybe this was the first, opportunity to see some great world cinema that
Yeah,
you might.
yeah, that remains the case. It's changed a little bit though, in the sense that it used to be the first of the year. Also, it used to be very January, and it was great world cinema that hadn't had New York premieres yet, and so it was kind of a good way of kind of saying, "How did you forget about these films? Like we're going to present them for you. And you're going to have an opportunity." It's changed a little bit because we've over the years moved it to March, and went from kind of more of a 2 weekend series at the museum into a full festival. So now it's 5 days in a row. And we've run with the kind of implications of first look a little bit more and thinking of it as being, not just, New York or New York premieres or premieres for North America or US or world as it happens at times, but like a first look at a certain type of film.
Yeah.
So it's also just looking for, as programmers, we're looking for things we haven't seen before, which can be as simple as a new approach to a genre, or just a new way of telling a story, or just simply something formally that kind of blows us away. So it's a we've refined that a little bit over time.
Yeah, maybe like a step sibling to new directors, new films, or something along those
In
lines.
some ways, yeah. I mean, new directors as first and second films. We're not limited to
Right.
just debuts or early films, but we have a fair amount. We have, I would say, a third of the films are would also sort of qualify in that direction. Um, but yeah, we also have folks that have made dozens of films too.
Yeah, like Eva Radovojevic, who I know has made a lot of films. Quickly though, while we'll still consider this sort of towards the beginning of the conversation, what are the dates? Because I
Sure.
should have said that from the very beginning.
So first look is this coming Wednesday, so it's March 12th through the 16th. It's a Wednesday through Sunday schedule. And we have screenings Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, and then all day Saturday, Sunday. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday daytime, we have something called Working on It, where we do works in progress and conversations about process.
Have the audiences in the past 10 years that you've been on board there, have the audiences evolved much? Have they, I mean, what is, in your estimation, the makeup of the audience? Are they like folks coming in from Manhattan and Brooklyn as well as Queens? Are they people that have just gotten now used to this annual festival and, own it? They feel like a certain amount of ownership and kin to it because it's in their area. I'm curious to know.
I think that the answer is sort of somewhat akin to the answer to how do people come to Museum of the Moving Image in general, being in Astoria, Queens. And I think that over the 10 years that I've been there, I have noticed that the audience is more reliably, like the core audience is more local. That there's a core group of people who are members, who are regulars, who make up core section of the audience, which is great because you can't
Yeah.
the struggle in the beginning was always how are we going to get people to come out to Queens from Brooklyn, from Manhattan, wherever.
Yeah.
That's still an aspect where it's great when people can travel, and it's great when they feel like it's not too onerous public transit wise to
Mhm.
come. But we are less reliant on that to have successful programs. And I think First Look is similar in that I do think that our members form a good portion of that audience. Members come for free for First Look. It's one of the major perks of membership to encourage them to experiment and see things that they would not ordinarily. And that kind of echoes up, I think. And so when that said, we do have a fair amount of people that travel throughout the city. Also have a fair amount of people that do travel from out of the state to come to First Look because of the density of new films and the density of like discoveries that you can make during that time. So we hear that. I hear that over time. And furthermore, and this is somewhat connected to what I was saying about those works in progress things. We have filmmakers that have participated in the festival before that come just to be there because they just want that environment. They want to be in an environment where there are other filmmakers and there's a possibility to kind of see one another, talk about each other's work, and be a part of something that's a little bit different than festivals that are just more about premieres, industry meetings, business. It's sort of like a kind of business free zone without being explicitly so.
Well, why don't we mention here how people can become members of the
For
Museum
sure.
of the Moving Image, since you brought it up.
Sure, it's a very low barrier of entry. It's a I think a little over $100 basically for an annual membership. And with that, you get free access to First Look. You also get free access to the ongoing series. So the things that we do monthly are free for members, and then members get, I think it's like $7 a ticket for films other than that. And then access to the museum, and with changing exhibitions and stuff like that. So it's a pretty low bar of entry, but it's the sort of thing that obviously keeps an institution like ours helps to keep it afloat because you sort of have that sort of base of support and base of finances.
People can go to museum. What's the
Movingimage.org.
Moving Image? Sorry, go ahead. Moving
Yeah,
Image. What? Dot
movingimage.org.
or .org. Thank you. Not that we won't have this as part of the notes and everything. We'll make sure people know how to find it. But that maybe haven't checked out the museum. If you haven't, come on. I mean, that's how many years has the Museum of Moving Image been in existence?
1985. 85.
85. So
Yeah. Started.
40-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Amazing. And now let me ask you a question before we can get in a little bit into the nitty gritty. I mean, I kind of think people can just check out, go to the museum, movingimage.org and check out the slate, check out the full schedule and all that. And there's a lot of great international cinema, reliable. You can kind of just go to see anything. I don't think you even have to worry about it. You're going to enjoy the film. You have expert programming going on here, so it's
Well,
uh,
that's kind of the idea, and that's to me
yeah,
that's what film festivals in general are best at. Basically
the
creating.
good ones.
Yeah, exactly. But creating an environment where you know that you're going to see some stuff that you've never seen before, some things you might love. You've seen something here or there that stuck
Hmm.
with you, and then you just come not because you know the film or the filmmaker or the actor or whatever, but you're there just to give it a shot and see what happens. I feel like that's festivals. There's nothing better than a film festival for that purpose.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people like you and me, we skim through obviously, and more than skimming. Like if you're going to a festival, whether it be a Sundance or whatever festival, and you're familiar with a certain percentage of the titles and the artists, and a certain buzz that might be around some films, perhaps, or yet, so you kind of go with a lot of intention
Mm-hmm.
and before you even get there, but it's important to leave some space for also wild card opportunities where you just because it fits into your schedule, or
Yeah.
because how else do you expand and evolve, right?
Absolutely true. I mean, I believe in that so deeply. It's like
Yeah.
the way that we construct the days are such that we try to make it so that you're enticed to stay for another film or come early to see a film or see a work in progress presentation followed by a film. Um, because exactly how else are you going to discover things? And I feel like my most profound experiences, certainly at festivals, in my memory, are stumbling upon something that then kind of stuck with me forever, changed my
Yeah,
life,
yeah.
whatever, introduced me to a filmmaker that has mattered to me ever since. That's the stuff.
Yeah, and also take advantage of the fact that you're there probably with a lot of film lovers, and so you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
kind of meet people. It's a social opportunity to meet people and then to find out the things they're interested in or they've seen that have turned them on and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
maybe check it out. I'm not just talking first look, but in
Yeah, of course.
general. And but that can occur, of course, even at a like an urban festival like this one.
Sure can. Well, I mean, my inspiration for a lot of what I do at the museum,
Uh-huh.
even though it's New York City, is more small town festivals. Is to sort of the screenings are all in house there. Well, anything we do beyond the screenings tends to be either in house or in one of the neighborhood bars or restaurants, and it winds up being the the space that we're inhabiting is actually not that different from a small town festival ultimately, and I feel
Hmm.
like that kind of whatever petri dish aspect is useful.
I happen just to watch a I guess you call it a short. It's half hour long, but Sylvia, the publicist for your festival, put this on my radar. Which is the Vanguard tapes, and
Oh yeah,
oh my gosh, for a New Yorker, I grew up in New York City, essentially, and it was just like such a a New York film.
it's
Um,
you can't believe you're able to watch it. I mean, you can't. It's like
where has
it's
this footage been all my life? But
yeah. So this is Bill Morrison.
yeah.
This is barely screened. This is the U.S. premiere of his film, The Vanguard Tapes. Bill Morrison, legendary experimental filmmaker, but also sort of venturing into sort of unexpected areas at this point in his career. Like his film Incident was just nominated for an Academy Award. He's fresh from the red carpet, coming to museum to
Hmm.
show this, which is very, very different from Incident, and also very, very different from some of his more archival experimental work. This is he worked as a dishwasher, as you know, because you saw it, he worked as a dishwasher at the Village Vanguard in the mid '90s, and got permission from the owner and from the musicians to bring his high 8 camera and film a little of what he was witnessing in the back rooms of the Vanguard in the kitchen, just musicians hanging out
Right.
and
Oh
giving
my
each other
God.
shit.
Right. Like a fly
Um,
on the wall. You could
yeah,
be you know, and she, what's her name? What Max's widow? What's her name?
I don't remember right
Oh, so I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but she's just such a quintessential New Yorker. The phone calls at the beginning.
now.
Well, it's such a great thing. I could just have watched hours of her on the phone, but the core of it are these journeyman jazz musicians who are hanging out, swapping stories, and I mean, it's just remarkable stuff. I mean, you
It
know,
is.
um, it's interesting. I was relating to it because when you have conversations like these that are just kind of two guys talking, this is like such an enormous percentage of what people are listening to now, like on podcasts and
Sure.
like watching YouTube channels or whatever it is. It's an interesting thing. Like now we have a part of the cinema language of cinema is we're just watching this archival, which appears just to be okay. The absence of editing in an obvious way, whereas I'm sure there was a lot of editing went into that film and what audio, issues and all, but it's interesting how now this is a thing that were interested in watching. Maybe Frederick Wiseman had a big part of that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. It is interesting. I think podcasts have been a fascinating evolution of this. But I mean, there's history of this. There's Wiseman. There's also just like My Dinner with Andre. The sort of
That's
uh,
true.
compelling nature of just a couple entertaining, smart people talking. But it also feel
Or
like
charismatic people. Yeah.
charismatic people. But
Yeah.
also, it feels like an era we're in now too. I just feel like regardless of what's been done before, this feels like, yeah, we're more we have more of an appetite for it now.
Mm. Well, anyway, while we're on the subject, so I know I have not seen Eva's film. I did was provided a link, so I'm definitely going to see it. But Eva Radvajevic, which is she's been on this show before.
Hmm.
Do you want to mention just because of that relation
Yeah.
to her
So her
film?
film When the Phone Rang, this is one of our what we call showcase screenings. So for each of the 5 nights, we have a kind of prime time screening, the opening night,
Okay.
closing night, and then 3 showcase screenings. And one of them is Eva's film, which screens on Friday. It's a film that premiered. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, take your time. If I could only through the magic of Zoom.
I've got some tea here.
Oh, you have something. That's good.
Um, this is a film that premiered at the Locarno Film Festival
Oh, very
last
nice.
summer.
It's a very big festival, obviously.
Huge festival, great premiere space for international
Yeah.
films and films of a more adventurous nature. Eva's sort of known for documentary work or nonfiction work or hybrid work previous to this. This is more of a kind of a narrative film, and yet it's very much based on her own childhood, her
Mm.
experience in the former Yugoslavia as a child, and the sort of dissolution of her country and culture and everything surrounding her as a young person who can't help but experience something like that as a personal thing at the same time, somehow feeling like responsible as young children are feeling responsible for the dissolution of their parents' marriage. There's some extension here about the dissolution of everything surrounding this young woman that seem somehow cyclically connected and that she might be responsible in some way. Really fantastic film, uniquely structured. This notion of when the phone rang, the phone calls, we cycle around the phone ringing on several different occasions. It being the inciting incident being finding out that a grandparent has passed away, and it happens to, basically reverberate as an earthquake throughout her life. Really, really,
Yeah.
really strong film, and so glad I get a chance to show it at the museum. Eva, as for you, is an old pal, and I've been sort of watching her
Mhm.
films and talking about her work for a long time, and really, really great that we get to showcase it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. I was able to see some recognizable names in that. What anything else that you wanted to particularly highlight?
Yeah, well, I mean, another showcase film. It's actually playing along with that Bill Morrison short that we talked about, the Vanguard tapes, is Charlie Shackleton, and his film Zodiac Killer Project. It premiered at Sundance, and just screened at the True False Film Fest.
Oh,
This is Charlie's maybe sixth first look. We love having
oh,
Charlie. Charlie is the sort of artist that in some ways is sort of so fully aligned with what we're doing at first look that it's hard to not just find reasons to bring him.
hmm,
This year we didn't find a reason to bring him. He had significant major feature
yeah.
film. But Charlie is the sort of artist who everything he does is different from the last thing he did, and is basically um, thinking about form and thinking about how films are made, how stories are told. Last year, we had an opening night short film that he made that was in 3D, where he's exploring the origins of 3D. This year with Zodiac Killer Project, its premise is both simple and hard to fully flesh out, as any film should be. Ultimately, you should have to watch it, but it's he went far down the road of getting the rights to a book written by a detective who was involved in the Zodiac Killer
Hmm, hmm.
investigations. Got financing, did location scouting, and then at the last minute, the rights were not conveyed to the book.
Oh
And
no.
most filmmakers' situations, that's the end of the project, and it becomes a lost project. But Charlie, being resourceful and interested in problems, decided to make a movie anyway. And so he does what's basically an audio piece,
Huh.
in a recording studio, telling you, the audience, the movie that he would have made, with visuals recorded at some of the locations that he had scouted, along with some reenactments, along with archival footage and footage stolen from other true crime films. So it winds up being kind of an essay film about true crime, and the era that we're in of true crime, the cliches, the modes,
Hmm.
and having a bit of fun with that very unique experience of watching that film, because it's very triangulated. You, the audience, are kind of connecting with him as he connects with the subject while he connects with the larger culture. um yeah, really kind of a singular film.
And there are any others that you were
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's
it's always kind of complicated because you don't want to leave things out. You don't want to
yeah.
suggest that these are, but either favorites or just not. You're not selling tickets to something, and but it is an opportunity to talk about things that might pull people into the orbit.
Well, I mean, which is just great. I mean, but in some ways, I think of it less as, sure, if somebody's listening and can come out for any of this, that'd be fantastic. But I'm also feel like this is as always the case with films having any kind of premiere in any location. It's an opportunity for it to get amplified beyond that, for other
Hmm.
programmers to find out about it, to program, but then also for folks to get excited about something and then seek out, when they have an opportunity to either go out to the theaters where they are, or if it comes out in streaming, etc.
Well,
Um,
that's a big if for a lot of films.
it's
Yes.
a huge if. It's a
Yeah.
tough moment for that. I think festivals are needed even more than ever because of that.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, a couple films that, like, there's this film called Tata, uh,
Hmm.
um, by Lena Vidovi and Radu Kionechuk. That's a film that premiered at the Toronto Film Festival last summer, and it is a documentary about Lena's father and her relationship with her father, and the legacy of basically abuse, and how, or I should say, toxic masculinity is a better way of going about this, because abuse gets used a little bit too broadly, I think. Basically, the plot of it is that her father calls her up from Italy, where he's been living as a kind of migrant worker for decades, and is running into issues with his employer, of an abusive employer, and knows that she's a journalist and filmmaker, and says, help, basically. And then she has to figure out how to help him while dealing with the fact that she avoids him, that
Hmm.
she doesn't
Hmm.
have great feelings about her father. She didn't have great memories of growing up with him. And it leads her to uh, go out of her way with her partner Radu to to see what she can do as a filmmaker and journalist to help her father and to help migrant workers in general, while also reflecting on this notion of toxic masculinity and how it sort of infects her family, her life, and in effect affects the entire culture that she both grew up in and lives in
Mm.
Eastern Europe. Um,
Tata.
Tata, which is father.
Oh, right.
uh, and, you know, she's Moldovan.
Hmm.
It sort of takes place in Romania and Italy, but they're originally Moldovan or Moldovan.
Okay.
But another family film that I'm keen on is a film called A Want in Her that premiered at IDFA in Amsterdam last fall. And this is a film about a filmmaker, um, another, you know, first person documentary.
Hmm.
The filmmaker is Myred Carton, who has more of an experimental background, and she goes back home to be with, or to go back home because her mother is missing. Her mother is a renowned public figure, former politician, who has sort of like been really seized by alcoholism and mental illness, and
Hmm.
goes missing for weeks, months at a time. So she's coming home to deal with a partner, a parent that she actually also actively avoids a lot of the time because of how it's affected her life. But here
Hmm.
she is going back into kind of the, going back into the fire to try to reckon with how to help and the limitations of help. And it's a sort of film that, if you've ever known anybody who suffered from addiction and had a family that's kind of been broken by these things,
Yep.
it hits very close to home, but it also goes places I've never seen a film go, in that it feels like you're watching a very talented artist figuring out how to use her tools to articulate the things that she's feeling and going through.
Yeah.
So you just get choices that she makes that you just don't see normally, or that
Mm.
never seen, that it seem very personal, seem very just like coming from the moment. And as a result, even though it's very particular to how she's trying to express herself, it has this way of getting deep within you. Really remarkable film. I was excited because I've been excited about it since November, and it just played at True Falls Film Fest, and
Hmm.
everybody I encountered coming out of the theater was blown away by it. So I'm excited
That's
that we're
great.
getting a chance to
Well,
show
you
it.
really sold me on it. I can't wait to see these now. The first run, first look, pardon me, the First Look Film Festival will run Wednesday, March 12th through Sunday, the 16th, at the Museum of the Moving Image in
Correct.
Astoria, Queens.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Hynes' swan song, sadly, but
It is my
I
sponsor.
wish you nothing but the best for the good thing. Just the last thing I wanted to ask you about, and again, for the full slate, definitely check out the website, which is movingimage.org. You went into, I mean, you were a journalist, right? That's was what your career was started as, right? Did you imagine yourself as a journalist through your career, or did you ever sort of anticipate that you might take a turn and become an important programmer and a museum now?
It's nothing but little side trips that I've taken along the way, which I think
Yeah.
has helped get where I am. But I started as a journalist in college, became a fiction writer, became a bookseller, and
Oh,
made my
missed
way
that part of your life.
made my way into kind of the film community in one way or another. And then, as I think you and I first met, I was a film publicist about 20 years ago with Susan Norgett, who was a significant
She's
person.
given a lot of people a lot of starts, and it's true. No, I don't think I met you then. I mean, I think I met you after that period, but not long after. Yeah.
And then I became but around that time I was also becoming a critic, and so
Mm.
critic and journalist. And within that, the years where I, for over a decade, I was doing that. But within that, I was very interested in programming and had done a little programming here and there, but not a lot.
Hmm.
It really comes down to David Schwartz,
Yeah.
my former boss, mentor, predecessor at Museum of the Moving Image, who identified me, came to me and said, "I think you'd be really good at this work. Would you ever consider doing this with me?" And it really comes down to him doing that. So, and here I am. I've been doing this at the museum for just about 10 years. And now I'm moving on to Jacob Burns Film Center soon for another chapter.
Hmm.
I've been saying this. I don't know how you feel about this in terms of your journey, but taking on a new position as a film programmer, therefore my second major position is now at the age of 51. I'm saying, oh, I guess this is what I do for a living. Because
Yeah.
previous to this, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if there was
Some
a
point or
single
other.
thing I
Right.
did for a living, but
Yeah, at
now
some
it's
point or other, you have to call yourself something, or get
exactly,
used to that word, whatever that word is. I mean, I guess
exactly.
you don't have to, but you sometimes it's just so obvious. You're maybe the last to know it.
I feel like I was the last to know
Everybody
it.
else knew you were a programmer, a museum programmer possibly, but the Jacob Burns music. So we'll come back to you, I guess, once you're settled in there and see what's going
That'd be
on. Maybe
great.
that would be a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And as you
maybe.
said, I'm creeping further and further north. So one of these days I'll be
Right.
programming nearer to you.
We've got some great theaters up here, though. I mean, and institute arts, and there's a lot going on up here, as you probably know. So if and when that day comes.
There sure is. Yes.
All right. Well, I
Thank you.
wish you all the luck with not only that transition, but also just with the festival coming up. I know it'd probably be an emotional thing for you. So,
Yeah, I mean, of course, but you know, the
mhm,
the fact that it's become something that so many people come out to and filmmakers need. To me, that's what it comes down to: is you want to create something that audiences and artists actually need. And so then it keeps living when that happens. You're not doing it for me, not doing it for the sake
sure.
of doing it. You're doing it because people
Yeah.
actually need it.
Not that this would need to remain in our edited, finished conversation, but do they have a? They must have a predecessor. Is that public information yet?
In process. No, that's in the
Okay.
process.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
as it happens, the associate curator of film with whom I program the festival, Edo Choi, he's recently moved on to Metrograph. So he's
Oh,
one of their full-time programmers at Metrograph. So there's a whole department that's being hired at the museum. So it's a real
wow.
major transition point. It's also the first time in the history of the museums, opened in 1985, that they've hired for this position. It was always
I
the
see.
founders handing it down. David was there from nearly the beginning. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, it's a big moment to bring in a film curator.
So if you're listening, this sounds like something you might want to just, reach out to the museum and let
Very
them
special
know
place.
that you've got the goods.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, and I hope we covered most everything you wanted to. Uh,
I mean, there's no way of covering everything. I'm just so
no,
glad
no, of course
to be
not.
able to talk about the
Yeah.
festival at all. Thank you.
Right. All right. Good. All right, Eric.
Thanks.
Have a great day, and we'll be in touch soon. All
Great.
right. All
Thanks,
right.
Ed.
You got it. Thanks.